I'm Eric Ronis, Professor of Communication, and I am happy to be presenting this Blue Stool talk. This is the 10th year of the Blue Stool Lecture Series, and today my topic is humility. So let me start with a story. When I was, I think, 20 years old, I was hanging out with a friend, pretty good friend, and the conversation was going here and there, and out of nowhere he says to me, okay, who was the greater musician, Elvis or the Beatles? Well, I was a huge Beatles fan, totally, respected Elvis, but I thought, all right, well, the Beatles. And I said, the Beatles. I think that, their influence on later musicians, the way that their career sort of changed in terms of their music. And he just stopped me. He said, you're wrong. It's Elvis. And he was kind of a little angry. And I was like, what? He said, Elvis was the greater musician. And then he went on. I don't remember the rest of the conversation. I just remember feeling puzzled and defensive, which I still actually do. Years later, when I became a communication professor, I studied Jack Gibb and what we call Gibb's categories. And Gibb says there are certain communication behaviors which foster supportiveness, and there are certain communication behaviors which create defensiveness. One such defensive-making behavior is called certainty. Yes, Gibb was right. He posits that the opposite quality is called provisionalism. Provisionalism is when we allow ourselves to listen to another person. We think maybe they are wrong, but I'm not sure. I will listen to you because I am not certain. And I think we don't do enough of that, especially now during this sort of election period. Let me talk about another of Gibb's categories. This one is called control versus problem orientation. Control, as you would think, is about having an agenda. There's a certain way to do it, and it's the way that I think. Here's an example. My son recently took the driver's test, for his license. And one of the things he needed to do was what's called a Vermont turnaround. I am from New York. I do not know what a Vermont turnaround is. I had taught my son to do a 3-point turn, which is what they do pretty much everywhere in the country, in order to switch direction on a street. So when his instructor says to him, okay, we're going down the street, I want you to turn around and go in the other direction, my son did a 3-point turn, and the instructor told him that was wrong and failed him. My son was able to solve the problem, safely turn around on the street. He just did not do it according to the rule that was deemed correct by the tester who had control. My son naturally felt defensive. I do not blame him. Gibb would have predicted that. So this idea of control versus problem orientation is something else that I think we're seeing so much today. We're not looking to solve problems together. I'm going to quote Bell Hooks here for a moment. She writes about the supposed objectivity of education, of the work that we do as professors. And she notes, this will to bring others into conformity merges with the will to dominate and control. If what we want from our students is that they conform with what we think, there's no room really for human context, for contingency, for empathy, for subjectivity. And Hooks notes, where there is domination, there is no place for love. As students and teachers, we are learners. But in order to learn, we must listen with humility. Offer our own perspectives with humility, and allow others to have a voice. The Blue Stool Lecture itself is not a soapbox. It is not about propagandizing. It is meant to introduce different ways of thinking, different perspectives. That's what I offer you today, some thoughts to consider. Even on the syllabus, I worked with a group of faculty years ago to put together a diversity and inclusion statement, which hopefully you are seeing on your syllabi. And one of the things it says is that opinions should be offered with humility. So we seem to value this on our campus, in education perhaps. But I see a total lack of it in today's political system and the political climate. There's a sense of, from a politician, I alone can fix this. We've heard that. Well, what's the point of having other people around then? Are we just passive observers? People to applaud? Damsels in distress waiting to be rescued? I am not a fan of strongman politics, but there seem to be a lot of people who disagree with me, fellow Americans. My thought is, how do we solve this? How can we be open to ideas, creative solutions? It's not about ownership. Humility is a virtue that we do not really appreciate in this country, maybe in the world. And I think that our arrogance is at the root of a lot of our social and political injustice. And that our arrogance is certainly at the root of the climate crisis right now. I think humans naturally fall into a sense of narcissism, hubris. Okay, let me switch gears. Since the COVID crisis, I have been here in my house much of the time, and so I sought refuge and connection on Facebook. Wow. That's a place where there's a lot of certainty. Just coming at you. People throwing their opinions and with exclamation points and capital letters. And I had to sort of retreat from that. So instead I started reading spiritual texts. Good move. And what I noted was that in any number of spiritual traditions, Sikhism, Hinduism, my own Judaism, Catholicism, there was a great value placed on humility in ways that our dominant American culture does not applaud humility. I found this in the book of Proverbs. The word of God can only be heard in a humble heart. Well, why is that? Because if I know everything, or think I know everything, then I don't need to listen to you. I'm in complete control of the agenda. You don't have any say in it. Sounds sort of like an American we all know. So if I don't need to listen to you, I won't. And then I don't learn. And so wisdom passes me by. With humility comes wisdom. That's also from the book of Proverbs. I read an article in the Global Catholic Journal. It's called Aletheia. The article was named Why Humility Isn't What Most People Think It Is. And I'd like to read a few quotes from that article. Humility shouldn't be confused with low self-esteem, timidity, feelings of inferiority, or self-degradation. According to the Christian tradition, humility means accepting that we aren't the center of the universe, and the world doesn't revolve around us. And I think there they mean as individuals, but I would also posit that it means us as an ethnic or other identity group, us as a species. Finally, humility, not being afraid of seeing and acknowledging our mistakes, makes us capable of growing and maturing. So when was the last time that you yourself allowed yourself to change your mind? Admit you were wrong. Apologize, even. Sometimes we are wrong. And it's important to acknowledge mistakes and acknowledge that we can learn from other people. For instance, I no longer eat veal. I now introduce myself using my pronouns, he, him, his. I eventually watched all of Schitt's Creek, even though I hated the first 2 episodes, because several friends of mine insisted that I should keep watching it and I would love it. And they were right, I freaking love it. We are in relation to something greater than just our own self and our own opinions. That is the earth, the truth, law and order. For me, divinity. The world is in tumult right now. And many of us are feeling passion about so many things. And that passion is a beautiful thing, don't get me wrong. But right now, in this moment, I think we need a corrective. And that corrective is humility. I'm going to quote Joe Biden here. This is Joe Biden before the election was called in his favor. And he says to the American people, "We have to remember the purpose of our politics isn't total, unrelenting, unending warfare. No. The purpose of our politics, the work of the nation, isn't to fan the flames of conflict, but to solve problems." Jack Gibb would agree. So, as this election winds down, next steps. Listen to others with humility, while also passionately speaking up for your own cherished values. You can do both. Anyway, that's what I intend to do. Far be it from me to tell you what to do.